She's just better learning at home. That's what my mother told the truancy officer standing at our door. Her hand rested on my shoulder, fingers pressing just hard enough that I knew not to speak. Delilah thrives in a one-on-one environment. A public school was overwhelming for her. The officer looked at me. I smiled, nodded, kept my sleeves pulled down over the bruises that were still purple from 3 days ago. And he believed her. They always did.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
I was 12 when they pulled me out of school. Not because I was struggling, not because I was bullied, not because I begged to stay home. I was pulled out because I came to breakfast with a black eye, and my mother realized she couldn't send me to school that way, not without questions, not without mandatory reporting, not without someone finally seeing what happened behind our front door. So she made a choice, a calculated one. She sat me down that morning, makeup palette in hand, and tried to cover the bruising, but it was too dark, too swollen. The foundation just made it look worse, like a bad stage costume. My father stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching in silence the way he always did. He never hit me himself. He just never stopped her. My mother stepped back, tilted her head, and said, "This won't work." I thought she meant the makeup, but she meant school. By noon, she'd called the district office, and by the end of the week, I was officially a homeschool student under the supervision of Diane Brennan, my mother, licensed teacher turned stay-at-home parent. That's how she framed it on the paperwork. She'd taught middle school English 20 years ago, so technically she was qualified. Technically. The first few weeks, I thought maybe it would be better. No more waking up at 6, no more crowded hallways, no more pretending everything was fine while my ribs ached under my shirt. I told myself this was easier, safer even. But homeschool wasn't about learning. It was about hiding. My mother set up a desk in the corner of the living room and handed me workbooks she ordered online. Math, history, science. She'd sit at the kitchen table with her coffee, scrolling her phone, occasionally glancing over to make sure I looked busy. There were no lessons, no discussions, no structure. Just silence and isolation. The bruises healed. That was the point. By the time anyone might have come around to check on me, I looked fine, clean, healthy, normal. And when the county sent someone to do a welfare check a month later, my mother had everything ready. She showed them my completed workbooks, neat and filled in. She showed them our curriculum plan, typed up and printed on fancy paper. She walked them through our daily routine, spoke about my progress, about how I was flourishing without the distractions of a traditional classroom. I sat on the couch, smiling politely, hands folded in my lap. They didn't ask me a single question. They left satisfied, and the door closed behind them like the final lock on a cage. I want to say I fought back, that I screamed or ran or told someone the truth, but I didn't. Because at 12, 13, 14 years old, I didn't fully understand what was happening to me. I thought every family had secrets. I thought everyone's mother lost her temper sometimes. I thought the rules were just stricter in our house. I thought I was the problem. My mother told me that constantly. "You're too sensitive. You provoke me. If you just listened the first time, this wouldn't happen." And I believed her. Because when you hear something enough times from the person who's supposed to love you most, it becomes truth. So I stayed quiet. I did my workbooks. I kept my bruises covered, and I became invisible. Homeschooling gave her unlimited access. No teachers watching, no counselors asking questions, no friends noticing when I flinched or wore long sleeves in summer. It was just me, her, and a house that felt smaller every single day. My father worked long hours. He was an accountant, methodical and absent. He never raised his voice, never hit me, but he also never intervened. When my mother's anger exploded, when I heard her footsteps storming toward my room, when I braced for what came next, he would turn up the television or leave the house entirely. His silence was permission. And I learned that there are many ways to hurt someone. Some of them don't leave marks you can see. The years blurred together. 14, 15, 16. I stopped thinking about school, about friends, about what a normal teenage life looked like. I existed in a loop. Wake up, workbooks, chores, silence, sleep. Repeat. My mother controlled everything. When I ate, what I wore, when I could leave my room. She checked my phone daily, read every message, monitored every site I visited. I wasn't allowed social media, wasn't allowed to go anywhere without her. The few times we went out to the grocery store or the bank, she'd hold my arm and smile at strangers like we were the perfect mother-daughter pair. And I'd smile back, because that's what I was taught to do. But something shifted when I turned 17. It wasn't dramatic. There was no single moment of revelation. It was quieter than that. It started with a mirror. I was getting dressed one morning and caught my reflection. I looked older, tired, hollow. My eyes didn't look like mine anymore. And I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed, really laughed. I couldn't remember the last time I felt like a person.
And for the first time, I thought, this isn't normal. I started paying attention to the way my mother's mood dictated everything, to the way my father pretended not to notice, to the workbooks I filled out alone while other kids my age were at prom, at football games, living lives I only saw in movies. I started realizing I wasn't being homeschooled. I was being erased. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
I started keeping a notebook. Not the workbooks my mother assigned, a small spiral notebook I found in a drawer left over from years ago. I hid it under my mattress and wrote in it at night when the house was quiet. I didn't write about what happened to me. Not directly. I couldn't face that yet. Instead, I wrote down facts. Today is March 14th. I am 17 years old. I have not left this house in 11 days. I have not spoken to anyone outside this family in 8 months. The last time I saw a doctor was 2 years ago. I wrote these things down because I needed proof that time was passing, proof that I existed, proof that this wasn't normal, even though every day felt exactly the same. The notebook became my anchor, and slowly the fog started to lift. I began noticing things I'd accepted as routine. The way my mother inspected my arms and legs every few days, checking for anything that might have shown. The way she scheduled our rare grocery trips for late evening when the store was nearly empty. The way she never, ever let me answer the door. One afternoon, a neighbor knocked, Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses down, asking if we'd seen her cat. My mother answered with her practiced smile, but kept the door barely cracked. I stood behind her in the hallway, and Mrs. Patterson's eyes found mine for just a second. She looked like she wanted to say something, but my mother closed the door before she could. Later that night, I heard my parents talking in their bedroom. My father's voice was low, concerned. Someone might start asking questions. She's 17. When was the last time anyone actually saw her? Nobody's asking anything, my mother snapped. She's homeschooled. It's legal. We filed everything correctly. Stop acting like we're doing something wrong. Silence. Then my father, quieter. I'm just saying, maybe we should let her get a job or volunteer somewhere. It might look better. Look better to who? No one's watching us, Richard. But she was wrong. Someone was watching. 3 days later, I was in my room when I heard a firm knock at the door. Not the soft, neighborly kind, the official kind. Through the crack in my door, I watched my mother smooth her hair, compose her face, and answer. A woman stood there, older, with graying hair pulled back tight. She wore a county badge on a lanyard. Mrs. Brennan, I'm Officer Linda Kowalski with the Truancy Division. I'm here for a routine check on Delilah Brennan, homeschool registry number 4471B. My heart stopped. My mother didn't flinch. Of course. Please, come in. Officer Kowalski stepped inside, holding a clipboard. She had kind eyes but a firm jaw. This wasn't her first visit like this, I could tell. My mother called for me, voice sweet as honey. Delilah, sweetheart, could you come out here, please? I walked into the living room slowly, pulled my sleeves down, kept my face neutral. Officer Kowalski looked at me and smiled. Hi, Delilah. I'm just here to check in, make sure everything's going well with your education. How are you doing? I glanced at my mother. She nodded encouragingly, hand resting lightly on the back of a chair. I'm doing well, I said softly. Thank you. Good. That's good. Officer Kowalski glanced around the room, at the stack of workbooks on the coffee table, perfectly arranged. Can you tell me what you're working on right now? What subjects? Math, history, English literature. I recited it like a script, because it was. Do you enjoy learning at home? I hesitated, just for a second, and in that second I saw something flicker in Officer Kowalski's eyes. She was listening, really listening. But my mother stepped in smoothly. Delilah's always been shy. She struggled in public school with anxiety. This environment has been so much better for her. Haven't you, honey? I nodded. Officer Kowalski wrote something on her clipboard. Then she looked back at me. Delilah, do you have friends? People you talk to outside the home? We have family friends, my mother interjected, and she's involved in our church community. We hadn't been to church in over a year. Officer Kowalski didn't look at my mother. She kept her eyes on me. Delilah? I opened my mouth, closed it. The words were right there, burning in my throat. Help me, please, I'm not okay. But I couldn't say them, because my mother's hand was now on my shoulder, fingers pressing just slightly. A reminder, a warning. I'm fine, I whispered. Officer Kowalski held my gaze for a long moment, then she nodded and made another note. She asked to see my coursework. My mother provided everything, organized and pristine. Kowalski flipped through it, asked a few more questions, then tucked her clipboard under her arm. Everything seems in order, she said, but there was something in her tone. Something unfinished. She handed my mother a card. If you need any resources, support, curriculum guidance, feel free to reach out. Then she turned to me one last time. Delilah, if you ever need anything, you can call the county office directly. The number's on that card. My mother thanked her, walked her to the door, and closed it gently. For 5 full seconds, we stood in silence. Then my mother turned and slapped me across the face so hard I tasted blood. Don't you ever hesitate like that again, she hissed. Do you understand me? You could have ruined everything. I nodded, hand pressed to my burning cheek. She stormed off to her room. My father wasn't home. He never was when it mattered. I went back to my room, locked the door, and pulled out my notebook. I wrote, Officer Linda Kowalski, Truancy Division, County Office. She noticed. And for the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. I kept Officer Kowalski's card. Not openly. I couldn't risk my mother finding it, so I tore off the corner with the phone number, memorized it, then flushed the rest down the toilet. I wrote the number in the back of my notebook using a code, substituting letters for numbers, scrambling the order. If my mother ever found it, it would look like random gibberish. But I knew what it meant. It meant there was a door. I just had to figure out how to open it. The days after Kowalski's visit were tense. My mother watched me differently, sharper, like she was waiting for me to make a mistake. She checked my phone 3 times a day instead of once. She started locking the router in her bedroom at night so I couldn't access the internet while she slept. She even moved my desk into the kitchen where she could see my screen at all times. She was tightening the cage. But she made one crucial error. She thought I was still the frightened 12-year-old she'd pulled out of school. She thought I was too broken, too obedient, too afraid to do anything but comply. She underestimated how much I'd been paying attention. I started small, observing patterns, my mother's routines, when she showered, when she napped, when she left the house for errands. My father's schedule was predictable. Gone by 7 in the morning, home by 7 at night. Dinner, television, bed. He existed like a ghost in our house, present but not really there. I realized that every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, my mother drove to a yoga class 30 minutes away. She'd be gone for exactly 2 hours. During that time, my father was at work. I was alone. That's when I started digging. I didn't have access to the internet, but I had something better. My parents' filing cabinet. My mother kept everything meticulously organized. Tax documents, medical records, legal papers, and buried in the back, in a folder labeled Delilah School, was every piece of paperwork related to my homeschooling. I pulled the folder one Thursday while my mother was gone and photographed every page with my phone's camera, even though I had no way to send them anywhere. I just needed proof, evidence that I could produce later if I ever got the chance. That's when I found the discrepancies. My mother had been filing quarterly progress reports with the county, as required by law, but the reports were lies. She claimed I was excelling in advanced coursework, completing labs, participating in co-ops and field trips. None of it was true. I'd been filling out basic workbooks designed for middle schoolers, and I hadn't left the house for anything educational in years. She'd been forging my signatures on the reports. I photographed those, too. Then I found something else. Medical records. Or, rather, the absence of them. I hadn't seen a doctor since I was 15, despite the law requiring annual checkups for homeschooled students in our state. My mother had been submitting exemption forms claiming religious reasons. We weren't religious. She was just keeping me away from anyone who might notice something was wrong. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, hands shaking. Then I sat on my bedroom floor and stared at my phone, at the photos I'd taken, at the evidence of a system I'd been trapped in without even realizing how many rules were being broken. They weren't just hiding me. They were breaking the law to do it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Officer Kowalski, about the way she'd looked at me, like she saw something beneath the surface, like she was waiting for me to say the words I couldn't. I wondered if she'd believed my mother, or if she'd filed her own report. The next morning, I tested something. At breakfast, I asked my mother a simple question. "Can I get my driver's license?" She looked up from her coffee, eyes narrowing. "Why?" "I'm 17. Most people my age already have one." "Most people your age go to regular school. You are not most people. And you don't need a license. You don't go anywhere." "Maybe I could get a job. Help out."
Her laugh was sharp. Huh, a job? Doing what? You have no experience, no social skills. You'd embarrass yourself. My father said nothing, just kept reading his newspaper. I didn't push further. But I'd gotten my answer.
She wasn't going to let me have any form of independence. Not a license, not a job, not even a library card. Because all of those things required identification, documentation, interaction with the outside world. She needed me dependent, controlled, invisible. But I was starting to see the cracks in her system. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Patterson knocked again. This time, she wasn't looking for her cat. She was delivering a package that had been misdelivered to her house. My mother answered, thanked her curtly, and started to close the door. But Mrs. Patterson didn't leave. "How old is your daughter now?" she asked casually. My mother's jaw tightened. 17. "Wow! I remember when you pulled her out of school. Must be, 5 years ago now?" 6. "She doing okay? I never see her around." "She's thriving," my mother said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Homeschooling has been wonderful for her." Mrs. Patterson looked past her, toward the living room where I stood frozen. Our eyes met for just a second. "That's good," Mrs. Patterson said slowly. "Well, if she ever wants to babysit or anything, I have twin grandkids who visit on weekends. Could use an extra set of hands." "We'll keep that in mind," my mother said and shut the door. She turned to me, furious. "Stay away from the windows. Stay out of sight. I don't need nosy neighbors asking questions." But it was too late. People were starting to ask. And I realized something powerful. My mother's control only worked if no one was paying attention. The moment people started noticing the girl who never left the house, who never went to school, who never existed in any public space, the whole facade started crumbling. I just needed one person to look close enough, one person to ask the right question, and I knew exactly who that person might be. I pulled out my notebook that night and wrote down everything I could remember about Officer Kowalski's visit, what she'd asked, how she'd looked at me, the way she'd paused before saying everything was in order. She hadn't believed it. I was sure of it. And somehow, I had to get back in front of her.
I turned 18 in April. There was no cake, no candles, no celebration. My mother handed me a card at breakfast with $20 inside and said, "You're an adult now. Act like it." I remember staring at that card, at the generic happy birthday message printed inside, and thinking, I'm legally an adult. She can't keep me here anymore. But the truth was more complicated than that. I had no money beyond that $20, no identification except an expired learner's permit I'd gotten at 15 and never renewed, no bank account, no credit card, no diploma or GED. I had never worked a job, never signed a lease, never existed in any system that mattered. On paper, I was an adult. In reality, I was completely trapped. My mother knew it too. That night, she came into my room and sat on the edge of my bed, something she rarely did. Her voice was softer than usual, almost gentle. "You know I only want what's best for you," she said. "The world out there, it's cruel. People would take advantage of someone like you. You're not ready." "I could get ready," I said quietly. "If you let me." Her expression hardened instantly. "Let you? You're 18, Delilah. You can leave any time you want. But if you walk out that door, you're on your own. No money, no support, no family." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. She left my room and I sat there in the dark, understanding exactly what she'd done. She'd spent 6 years making sure I was completely dependent on her. She had isolated me so thoroughly that I had no safety net, no resources, no one to turn to. She'd built a cage without locks because she knew I was too terrified to open the door myself.
But something shifted that night. Maybe it was turning 18. Maybe it was the weight of realizing I could spend the next 10, 20, 30 years in this house, slowly disappearing until there was nothing left of me. I couldn't let that happen. I pulled out my notebook and started making a real plan. Not just observations, not just evidence. A plan to leave. Step 1. I needed identification. My birth certificate and social security card were in my parents' filing cabinet. I'd seen them when I photographed the homeschool records. I would take them. Not yet, but soon. Step 2. I needed money. The $20 wasn't enough to survive on. I started checking the couch cushions, my father's jacket pockets, anywhere loose change might hide. I found $3 in quarters over 2 weeks. It wasn't much, but it was something. Step 3. I needed somewhere to go. This was the hardest part. I had no friends, no extended family I was in contact with, no job prospects. But I had Officer Kowalski's number. I just needed access to a phone I could use without being monitored. The opportunity came on a Tuesday in May. My mother left for her yoga class like always, but this time, in her rush to leave, she forgot her cell phone on the kitchen counter. I heard her car pull out of the driveway, watched through the window as she disappeared down the street. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed her phone. It was locked, but I knew her passcode. I'd watched her enter it hundreds of times. 0723. My birthday, July 23rd. The irony wasn't lost on me. I opened the phone, went to the dial pad, and entered Officer Kowalski's number from memory. It rang once, twice, 3 times. County Truancy Office, Officer Kowalski speaking. I froze. My throat closed up. For a second, I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. "Hello?" she said again. "Is anyone there?" "It's Delilah Brennan," I whispered. Silence. Then, carefully, "Delilah, are you safe right now?" "I'm alone. My mother's gone. I don't have much time."
The words came out in a rush. She pulls me out of school to hide Bruises. I haven't left this house in months. She forges my progress reports. I haven't seen a doctor in years. I have evidence, photos. I'm 18 now, but I have no ID, no money, no way out. I'm trapped, and I don't know what to do. I could hear Officer Kowalski writing something down. "Delilah, listen to me very carefully. What you're describing is abuse and educational neglect. You're an adult now, which means you can leave, but I understand you need help to do that safely. Are you in immediate danger?" "Not right now, but if she finds out I called you..." "She won't, not from me. Here's what I need you to do. I'm going to schedule another welfare check. This time, I'll bring a social worker. We'll interview you separately from your mother. Can you be ready to tell us everything when we come?" "When?" "Give me 3 days. Friday morning. Will she be home?" "Yes." "Good. Delilah, do not do anything that might put you in danger before then. Act normal. Don't let her suspect anything. Can you do that?" "Yes." "You're very brave for calling. We're going to help you." I hung up just as I heard a car door slam outside. My mother was back. I deleted the call from her phone log, placed it exactly where she'd left it, and ran to my room. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the doorknob. She came inside a minute later, muttering about forgetting her phone. I heard her pick it up, pause, then continue to her room. She didn't suspect anything. I sat on my bed, pressing my hands to my chest, trying to slow my racing heart. 3 days. I just had to survive 3 more days. That night at dinner, my mother was in a good mood. She talked about redecorating the living room, about a new recipe she wanted to try. My father nodded along, half listening. Everything seemed normal. But I couldn't eat, because I knew what was coming. I knew that in 3 days, someone was going to knock on that door and ask questions my mother couldn't control the answers to. And I knew that when that happened, everything would change. I just didn't know if I was ready for it. That night, I wrote one final entry in my notebook. Friday, Officer Kowalski, social worker. I told the truth. Whatever happens next, I can't take it back. This is the moment. I'm either free or I'm not. I'm choosing free. I hid the notebook, turned off my light, and waited for Friday to come.
The 3 days before Friday felt like 3 years. Wednesday crawled by in excruciating slow motion. I did my workbooks. I ate meals in silence. I kept my face neutral and my answers short. Every time my mother looked at me, I was certain she could see right through me, could read the panic written across my thoughts. But she saw nothing, because she'd never really looked at me in the first place. Thursday was worse. My mother was in one of her moods, the kind where everything I did was wrong. I chewed too loudly. I left a cup in the sink. I walked too heavily down the hallway. Each infraction earned a sharp comment, a shove, a reminder that I was only tolerated, never wanted. I took it all without reacting, because in less than 24 hours, someone was coming who might actually listen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario. What if my mother refused to let them interview me alone? What if I froze again, like I had the first time? What if they didn't believe me? What if the social worker took one look at our clean house and perfect paperwork and decided everything was fine? What if I'd risk everything for nothing? At 2 a.m, I got up and retrieved my notebook. I flipped through the pages, through months of evidence I'd carefully documented. Dates, incidents, patterns, the photos on my phone of forged documents. I had proof. I just had to be strong enough to show it. Friday morning arrived with gray skies and the smell of rain. My mother made breakfast like it was any other day. Eggs, toast, orange juice poured into glasses that matched. My father ate quickly and left for work without a word. At 9:45, there was a knock at the door. My mother's head snapped up. She wasn't expecting anyone. I watched her walk to the door, watched her compose her face into that pleasant mask she wore so well. She opened it. Officer Kowalski stood there, and beside her was a woman I'd never seen before, younger, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled into a bun and tired eyes. She wore a badge that read, County Child and Family Services. Mrs. Brennan, Officer Kowalski said evenly, this is Rebecca Torres, a social worker. We're here for a follow-up assessment on Delilah. My mother's smile didn't waver, but I saw her knuckles go white against the doorframe. Of course, though I'm not sure why a social worker is necessary. Delilah's 18 now. Which is exactly why we need to ensure she's being properly transitioned into adulthood, Rebecca Torres said smoothly. May we come in? My mother had no choice. She stepped aside. They entered, and Rebecca's eyes swept the room before landing on me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, trying not to shake. Hi, Delilah, Rebecca said warmly. I'm Rebecca. Mind if we sit and chat for a bit? I nodded. We all sat down in the living room. Officer Kowalski pulled out her clipboard. Rebecca set a leather folder on her lap. My mother perched on the sofa edge, radiating controlled tension. So, Rebecca began, looking at me. Officer Kowalski tells me you've been homeschooled for about 6 years now. How has that experience been for you? I glanced at my mother. She was staring at me with a look that could cut glass. It's been fine, I said carefully. Just fine? Rebecca smiled. Tell me about your typical day. What do you study? Do you have any activities outside the home? I do workbooks, math, history, English. I don't really go out much. When's the last time you saw a doctor? Silence. My mother opened her mouth to answer, but Rebecca held up a hand. I'd like Delilah to answer, please. I don't remember, I said quietly. A few years ago. Rebecca made a note. And friends, do you have peers you spend time with? No. Any plans for after you complete your homeschooling? College? Work? I shook my head. Rebecca's expression remained neutral, but I could see her processing everything. That isolation, the lack of medical care, the complete absence of any future planning. She closed her folder and looked at my mother. Mrs. Brennan, would you mind if I spoke with Delilah privately? It's standard procedure for assessments like this. My mother's face went rigid. I don't see why that's necessary.
It's protocol, Officer Kowalski interjected firmly, for all young adults in homeschool situations. Just a few questions in a neutral setting. My mother looked like she wanted to argue, but she couldn't without raising suspicion. Fine, but make it quick. Rebecca stood. Is there a room we can use? Delilah's bedroom, perhaps. My mother's jaw clenched. The dining room. We moved to the small dining room, and Rebecca closed the door. It wasn't much privacy. My mother was right on the other side, but it was something. Rebecca sat across from me and leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Delilah, I need you to be honest with me. Are you safe in this house? My throat tightened. This was the moment, the only chance I might get. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and opened the photo gallery. I have evidence, I whispered. Rebecca's eyes widened slightly. I showed her the forged progress reports, the falsified medical exemptions, the discrepancies in everything my mother had filed with the county. She pulled me out of school because I had a black eye. She couldn't send me looking like that, so she made me disappear. I haven't left this house in months. She controls everything. My phone, my food, when I can leave my room, and if I don't do exactly what she says, I pulled up my sleeve. There were old bruises there, faded, but still visible if you looked closely. Rebecca's face went very still. She took photos of my phone screen with her own device, then looked me directly in the eyes. Do you want to leave this house? Yes, I breathed. Please, I can't stay here anymore. Rebecca nodded once, then stood. Wait here. She opened the door and stepped back into the living room. I heard her speaking in low tones with Officer Kowalski, then my mother's voice rising. What are you suggesting? That I'm some kind of… Mrs. Brennan, Rebecca cut her off, voice sharp and professional. Based on evidence of educational neglect, medical neglect, and credible disclosure of abuse, I'm recommending immediate intervention. Delilah is 18, which means she can choose to leave voluntarily. We're here to facilitate that if she wishes. This is insane, my mother shouted. She's lying. She's always been dramatic, manipulative. Delilah, Rebecca called. Can you come out here, please? I walked into the living room on shaking legs. Rebecca looked at me. Do you want to leave with us today? Every eye in the room was on me. My mother's face was a mask of fury and disbelief. Officer Kowalski stood by the door, hand near her radio. Rebecca waited patiently. This was it. The moment I'd been terrified of and hoping for all at once. Yes, I said. I want to leave. My mother lunged toward me, but Officer Kowalski stepped between us instantly. Mrs. Brennan, I need you to step back. She's my daughter. She's an adult, Rebecca said firmly, and she's making her choice. Rebecca turned to me. Go pack a bag, just essentials. We'll help you get the rest later. I ran to my room, grabbed my backpack, and threw in clothes, my notebook, my phone charger. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip it closed. When I came back out, my mother was crying. Not real tears, performative ones. How could you do this to me? She sobbed. After everything I've done for you. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I felt nothing but pity. You didn't do this for me. You did this to me.
The car ride was silent except for the sound of rain starting to fall. I sat in the back seat of Rebecca's sedan, backpack clutched on my lap, watching my childhood home disappear in the side mirror. Officer Kowalski followed behind us in her county vehicle. I half expected my mother to run after us, to somehow stop this from happening. But she didn't. The house just got smaller and smaller until it vanished completely. Rebecca glanced at me through the rearview mirror. You did the right thing, Delilah. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure what I felt. Relief? Terror? Guilt? All of it at once, crashing over me in waves. Where are we going? I finally asked. Safe house, Rebecca said.
It's a transitional shelter for young adults aging out of difficult situations. You'll have your own room, 3 meals a day, and access to counselors and case managers. We'll help you figure out next steps. Next steps. The words felt foreign. I'd never had next steps before, just the same day repeated endlessly. We drove for 30 minutes before pulling up to a modest, 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. It looked normal, like any other house on the street. Somehow, I'd expected something institutional, cold. Officer Kowalski met us at the door. A woman in her 50s answered, wearing jeans and a cardigan. She had kind eyes and a name tag that read Gloria, house manager. "You must be Delilah," Gloria said warmly. "Come on in. Let's get you settled." Inside, the house smelt like coffee and something baking. There were couches in the living room, a television playing quietly, a bulletin board covered in flyers about job programs and GED classes. 2 other young women sat at the kitchen table, talking softly. They glanced up when I entered, offering small nods before returning to their conversation. Gloria led me upstairs to a small bedroom, twin bed, dresser, desk, window overlooking the backyard. Simple, but clean. Mine. "This is your space," Gloria said. "No one comes in without your permission. Bathrooms down the hall. Dinners at 6, house meetings on Sunday nights. Other than that, you're free to come and go as you please. We just ask that you check in if you're going to be out past 10. Free to come and go. The concept was dizzying. Rebecca set a folder on the desk. "This has resources, contact information for legal aid, health services, educational programs. I'll be your caseworker for the next few months while we get you stabilized. We have an appointment on Monday to apply for a state ID and Social Security card replacement. After that, we'll work on employment and education options." I nodded mechanically, trying to absorb everything. "Delilah," Rebecca said gently, "you're safe now. I know that's hard to believe, but you are." They left me alone in the room. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. I was 18 years old, and I'd just left the only home I'd ever known. I should have felt free. Instead, I felt untethered, like I was floating in space with nothing to hold on to. That first night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Footsteps in the hallway, a door closing, someone laughing downstairs. I kept expecting my mother to burst through the door, to drag me back, to tell me this was all a mistake. But she never came. The next morning, Gloria knocked softly and asked if I wanted breakfast. I followed her downstairs, where 3 other residents were already eating. They introduced themselves. Tasha, 19, kicked out by her foster family. Mia, 20, left an abusive relationship. Jordan, 18, aged out of the system. They didn't ask about my story. There was an unspoken understanding that everyone here had one, and you only shared if you wanted to. "You get used to it," Tasha said, passing me the orange juice. "The quiet, I mean. It's weird at first." She was right. The quiet was overwhelming. No one was monitoring what I ate, how much, how fast. No one was checking my phone. No one was telling me where to sit or how to sit or what to say. I could just be. And I had no idea how to do that. Over the weekend, I stayed mostly in my room, trying to process everything. Rebecca had left me her direct number and told me to call if I needed anything, day or night. On Sunday, I finally worked up the courage to look at my phone. I had 17 missed calls from my mother, 10 voicemails, dozens of text messages. The first few were angry. "How dare you embarrass this family? You have no idea what you've done." Then they turned desperate. "Please come home. We can work this out. I'm sorry. Your father misses you." The last one, sent at 2 in the morning, "You'll never survive out there. You need us. You'll be back." I blocked the number, and then I called Rebecca. She won't stop contacting me," I said quietly when she answered. "Forward all communication to me," Rebecca said immediately. "Don't respond. Don't engage. I'll handle it legally if necessary. You focus on you. Focus on me." Another foreign concept. Monday morning, Rebecca picked me up for our appointment. We went to the Social Security office first. I showed them my birth certificate, the one I'd grabbed from my parents' filing cabinet before leaving. After 2 hours of paperwork and waiting, they issued me a replacement card. I stared at it. My name,
My number. Proof that I existed independent of my parents. Next was the DMV for a state ID. The woman behind the counter asked for my address. I gave her the safe house address. She didn't question it. When she handed me the ID card, I looked at the photo. The girl staring back looked tired, pale, uncertain. But she looked real. "This is yours," Rebecca said as we walked back to the car. "Your identity. They can't take this away from you."
That afternoon, we met with a lawyer from Legal Aid, pro bono. She explained my options for becoming fully independent, how to protect myself legally from my parents, and what resources existed for someone in my situation. "You'll need to file for your homeschool transcripts," she said. "You're entitled to them. Then we can work on getting you enrolled in a GED program." "What if they refuse to give them to me?" I asked. "Then we compel them through the court. But most parents cooperate once they realize they're being watched." Being watched. My mother's worst fear. That night, back at the safe house, I sat at the desk in my room and opened my notebook. I wrote, "Day 3. I have an ID. I have a social security card. I have a caseworker and a lawyer. I have a room that's mine. I'm still terrified. But I'm here, and I'm not going back." For the first time in 6 years, I was writing about a future instead of just recording the past. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Gloria knocked on my door around 8. "Movie night downstairs if you want to join. No pressure." I hesitated, then followed her down. The other residents were sprawled on the couches, passing popcorn, arguing good-naturedly about what to watch. Mia patted the empty spot next to her. "Come on, we voted on a comedy, nothing heavy." I sat down. The movie started, someone made a joke, Tasha laughed, Jordan threw a piece of popcorn at her. It was so normal, it almost hurt. But I stayed. I watched the movie, and when it ended, and everyone said goodnight, I went upstairs feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Like, maybe I could belong somewhere. Like, maybe I wasn't broken beyond repair. Like, maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. 6 months later, I stood in front of a mirror holding my GED certificate. It was official. Embossed seal, my name printed in bold letters, Delilah Marie Brennan, High School Equivalency Diploma. I'd passed on my first attempt. Math, science, social studies, language arts. Gloria had driven me to the testing center, waited in the parking lot for 4 hours, and took me out for ice cream afterward to celebrate. "You did this," she'd said, grinning, "all on your own." She was right. No one had handed me study guides or sat with me through practice tests. I'd done it myself, using free resources from the library and online tutorials. I'd stayed up late at the safe house kitchen table, teaching myself algebra and essay structure, things my mother's workbooks had never covered, and I'd done it. The GED was the first step. The second was getting a job. Rebecca helped me put together a resume, which was painfully thin, and practice interview skills. I applied to 12 places, got rejected by 9, but 3 called me back. I chose a position at a local community center as a front desk assistant. Minimum wage, part-time hours, answering phones and checking people in for classes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My first paycheck felt like winning the lottery, $287 after taxes. I opened my own bank account and deposited every cent. Then I sat in my car, Gloria's car, technically, that she'd let me borrow, and cried. Because for the first time in my life, I'd earned something that no one could take away from me. The safe house had a 6-month residency limit. As I approached that deadline, Rebecca helped me apply for subsidized housing,
We found a small studio apartment in a building that accepted tenants with limited rental history. The rent was affordable if I budgeted carefully. It had one room, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom with a shower that only produced lukewarm water. I loved it immediately. Move-in day was simple. I didn't have much: clothes, my notebook, a few books I'd collected from the library's free pile. The other residents from the safe house helped me carry boxes. Tasha brought cleaning supplies. Mia gave me a lamp she didn't need. Jordan contributed a coffee maker and a bag of grounds. First place is always the hardest, Jordan said, looking around the empty space. But you made it. That's what matters. After everyone left, I sat on the floor of my empty apartment and looked around. It was quiet. Truly quiet. Not the oppressive silence of my mother's house, but the peaceful kind. The kind where you could hear yourself think. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my blocked numbers. My mother's contact was still there, hidden but present. I'd received updates through Rebecca. My parents had been investigated by the county. No criminal charges were filed. I was 18 when I left, and the statute of limitations on earlier incidents had passed, but they'd been flagged in the system. If they ever tried to homeschool another child, they'd be monitored closely. My mother had tried to reach out through relatives, through old family friends, even through Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor. Each time, Rebecca had intervened legally, sending cease and desist letters. My father never tried to contact me at all. That hurt more than I expected, not because I wanted to hear from him, but because his silence confirmed what I'd always known. He'd never cared enough to fight for me. I unblocked my mother's number. Not to call her, just to see. There were no new messages. She'd stopped trying 2 months ago. I stared at her name on the screen, then deleted the contact entirely. Some doors don't need to be left open. I enrolled in community college that fall. 2 classes to start: Introduction to Psychology and English Composition. I was terrified walking into that first lecture hall, convinced everyone would know I didn't belong, that I'd been homeschooled in isolation, that I was years behind. But no one knew. No one could tell. I sat in the back, took notes, and when the professor asked a question about childhood development, I raised my hand. Environmental factors can either support healthy growth or suppress it. A child's potential isn't fixed. It depends on whether they're given the tools and freedom to develop. The professor nodded approvingly. Exactly! Well said! Something unlocked in me that day. I'd spent years being told I was too sensitive, too difficult, not smart enough, but I was none of those things. I was resilient. I was intelligent. I was capable. I just needed the chance to prove it.
Through my job at the community center, I started volunteering with a youth mentorship program. Kids aged 12 to 18, many from difficult backgrounds, foster care, poverty, abuse. The kinds of stories that don't make it into pamphlets but live in the spaces between words. I didn't share my story at first. I just listened, helped with homework, taught them how to fill out job applications, reminded them they weren't defined by what happened to them. One girl, 15 years old, told me she felt invisible. Like, no one actually sees me, she said quietly. Just what they want me to be. I looked at her and saw myself at 12, at 14, at 17. I see you, I said, and you're not invisible. You're just surrounded by people who aren't looking. She cried. I let her. Because sometimes being seen is the first step to believing you exist. A year and a half after leaving, I received a letter in the mail. Legal letterhead. My mother's attorney. My hand shook as I opened it. It was a request for me to sign away my inheritance rights. My parents were restructuring their estate and wanted to ensure I had no legal claim to their assets. I read it twice, then called Rebecca. They want to make sure I get nothing, I said flatly. Probably, Rebecca agreed. But you don't need their money, Delilah. You never did. She was right. I signed the papers, had them notarized, and sent them back. I didn't want anything from them. Not their money, not their legacy, not their last name if I could eventually change it. I wanted a life they had no part in, and I was building it. 2 years after walking out of that house, I stood at my community college graduation. Associate's degree in social work. I'd made the dean's list both semesters. Gloria was in the audience, Rebecca, Tasha and Mia and Jordan, my supervisor from the community center, my psychology professor who'd written me a recommendation letter, a whole row of people who'd shown up for me. When they called my name, I walked across that stage and accepted my diploma. The applause sounded like thunder. I looked out at the audience, at the people cheering for me, and realized something powerful. I'd built a family, not through blood or obligation, but through choice and presence and showing up when it mattered. That night, I went back to my apartment and pulled out my old notebook. I flipped to the first page, to the entry I'd written at 17. Today is March 14th. I am 17 years old. I have not left this house in 11 days. I picked up a pen and wrote one final entry. Today is May 20th. I am 20 years old. I left that house 749 days ago. I have a degree, a job, an apartment, a future. I am not invisible. I am not broken. I am not the girl they tried to erase. I am the woman who refused to disappear. And I am free. I closed the notebook and placed it on a shelf. Not hidden this time, not buried under a mattress. Just there. A record of where I'd been and how far I'd come. My mother once said I'd never survive without them. She was wrong. I didn't just survive. I became someone she could never understand. A woman who chose herself, who built a life from nothing, who turned pain into purpose. And every single day, I wake up in my small apartment, drink my coffee, and remind myself, this is what freedom looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but mine. Completely and utterly mine.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.